Good morning, everyone. Welcome. My name is Katie Gideon. I will be the on-camera facilitator for this Monday morning social. And honestly, taking a peek at the schedule to come, it looks like this may be my last Monday with you all for a while, which is great. That means Jenna will be back on the circuit to join my co-facilitator, who you'll see in the chat, Jen K. We are super glad to be here. We love setting up our weeks with each and every one of you, especially knocking out this weekly setup with our very loyal Monday crowd. It is great to see all of our returning socialers. Welcome. It's always good to see your name in the chat. And then if you are new, or maybe this is a different social than what you normally attend, welcome as well. You can always participate in as much or as little as you want in these socials, which I feel like is great because sometimes you show up and you're ready to just like tackle all of the pages, get everything ready to go, mark that setup off of your to-do list. And then there are other days where you just rolled out of bed and you're not feeling great. You could be physically not feeling great, mentally not feeling great, emotionally not feeling great, and you just want to be here and hang out in the chat, which is also wonderful. We are glad that you're here exactly as you are. Just double check that if you want to participate in the chat, that it is set to everyone. It will default to hosts and panelists, which comes to just myself and Jen, and we can always help in that conversation if you want, but we usually assume you like to talk to the other people here as well, because we can provide some perspectives, but the best group to get inspiration from is the larger Sonder fam that is in the chat. And so please be kind and courteous to yourself and others. No promotions or spam. Respect everyone's privacy. No hate speech or bullying. We do like to make the call out to limit repetitive product and accessory questions. However, we do like to talk about products, and we know that you guys like to talk about all of the wonderful things and other ways to connect with everyone outside of the Sonder app, which we always appreciate, but we just ask that it doesn't detract from why we're here, which is the weekly setup for week 3 of April. This is the last full week of April, which is wild. But can you believe we've made it that far? And then we will most likely redirect those customer care inquiries to our team, hello@siliconsonder.com, because while Jen and I have some information, we do not have anything specific, but we can always bubble up any issues or concerns. And this is also a great time to share any feedback with our headquarters team, because we do design a lot of these journals pretty far in advance just so they can be ready. So this is a great time to include some of that. And as always, Sonder Socials are a tool to help elevate your emotional health through the power of community. That's why we love doing these socials. But you're responsible for your own emotions, well-being, and decisions. So we know that things can be a little tricky this time, especially as we're transitioning between the different seasons. If you have school-age children, it's that now kind of mad dash until summer break. And same thing with this also tends to be a time of, I think, transition for a lot of people in general. So if you have milestones coming up, all of those things that maybe you're going to be a little distracted, that's okay. I had shared that I was finding awareness a little tricky just because of where I currently am at in my life cycle, so to speak. So I've just had a hard time focusing on some of the prompts and those things. So give yourself some grace, take a deep breath. We have ample time to work on all of these things. There are no due dates. There is no journal police. So just be kind and gentle with yourself if you need it. But if you're ready to kind of tackle full on, let's do it. So loving the alliteration of April and awareness. But I wanted to take a little bit of a pivot back kind of inward, because I liked these two quotes. And I love being able to do the socials with Jen because she always puts a really elegant, positive spin on a lot of the conversations that she and I for sure have. I tend to be a little more doom and gloom. And she just has this really lovely, lovely way of making it a little bit more positive. So I thought these were a great way to dive in because I do like to, poke myself a little bit more so. So I thought these were really interesting quotes with the self-awareness doesn't stop you from making mistakes. It allows you to learn from them, because I'm a big turning inward, how can we fix something? Why did something not go wrong? I'm a big after action report type personality. And I sometimes those can lead to like great solutions of, okay, well, we don't talk about this topic, or maybe we did this wrong and we can learn from it. But other times, if I can't quite find something so readily available, I will absolutely dwell on something negative, make something out of nothing, figure out a way to bring it into my control sphere instead of leaving it for other people to control. Just because I like to have that type of, I need something like that to solve it. And then I always like this gentle reminder because I was already seeing people's kind of the outer fear, the sphere of influence kind of slowly creeping in. And I liked this idea of making yourself a priority is not about being self-centered, it's about being self-aware. Because I do feel like sometimes we don't always kind of do that inward pivot. We focus so much on, and a lot of it comes from being a people pleaser or one of those, I feel like I even joke I can solve anybody else's problems except my own. So taking the opportunity to kind of come back to that like self-aware component. And again, it's not having to like reshuffle all of the prioritization and the fact of like, I can't do anything until I've done something. But it is that gentle reminder of you can't pour from an empty cup. So making sure that you still include yourself on that priority, be it set yourself as an individual goal, but I do think there's that requirement to check in. And as we get busier and busier, I find myself phoning it in when I check in with myself and realizing that that is unproductive. So, like I said, I was a big fan of these two particular quotes. And so we're going to move into that week 3 awareness mind map, and then we're going to do our rosebud thorn reflection exercise on page 44 in your April journal. And then we're going to move into those weekly setup pages, which are going to be page 46 and 47 in your April journal. And so, if you have not done a mind map with us before, we love these. They are a great way to dive a little bit deeper into this month's theme and each month's theme. So, this is not printed in your journal, but if you go ahead and turn to the mind map section that you've either already created, or if you need to set one up, here are a couple different places you can put that. You can use that weekly scratch pad on page 46, or you can use the quote page on page 38. A lot of folks are team back page, page 60. I am a first blank page person just because that's I feel like how the cards fell. And so we have completed week 1 and week 2, and we're going to bring up our week 3 layer. And what's great about these is we include the previous ones, but do not feel like you are behind. Sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. As I was saying, I was having a hard time kind of making the mind connection with all that was going out, and I was getting distracted. So it's just having a trickier time kind of coming back to these things and answering these questions a little bit more closer to real time. And I feel like that happens. I do find them really valuable and really great tools. And I think this month has been really great with trying to build that awareness. I just know I haven't been in the headspace to make that genuine connection. So I am still working on that. So, week 1, we did a sensory grounding exercise, which is great. Highly recommend it if you find yourself a little stressed, a little anxious, or kind of the verge of some of those. Check in with kind of what you see, what you feel, what you hear, what you taste. Using those 5 sentences is a great tool for that. And then we did a mind body reflection, which was just acknowledging when you start to feel those emotional and physical sensations, and you can almost like feel the starting point of stress build, and how you can kind of help yourself kind of maybe jump off that off ramp so you don't go to that as well. And so now we're going to do week 3, which is connecting with self, which is why I pulled some of those self-awareness quotes earlier. And so with this one, we're going to list some simple ways you can check in with yourself daily. Consider activities like journaling, meditation, or a quiet walk. How might these help you understand your inner thoughts and feelings to bring out more awareness? And I know a lot of this kind of seems a little like, well, that's why we're here. That's why we do the journaling. But have you actually checked in with like your journal routine or your kind of productivity there? Or are you purely in the like productivity activity realm, because even I have found myself, I love the trackers. They're excellent. They keep me on track, but I'm missing out on some of that mental and emotional connection. And I know that's just where, again, my headspace is. So I thought this was a really good opportunity to slow down, maybe pivot a little bit and put you kind of in a priority component. And so this is my example. I have the one on the right. That is my mind map page. And so I took the first two questions, those are listed there. And then I've added the others of, do you have comfort activities that you do? Are these something that you kind of always go to if you've had a rough day, if you've got a rough week coming into? Are they always kind of the go-to? I always think of like the comfort TV shows that you maybe always kind of watch. Or are you maybe looking for some new ones? And that could be new ways to check in with yourself, new ways to kind of run a routine. And then just the gentle reminder of turning inward. Do these activities require others to support you, or can you conclude some solo activities? And that's like, I feel like the pivot that we always feel a little guilty about, because it's again putting ourselves a little bit more on that self-priority pedestal, which can sometimes be awkward, especially if you have family, friends, all of those other requirements kind of dragging you in different directions. But it's one of those, can you find ways that your family can kind of help connect with you, your friends, but also leaving a little space that you connect with yourself. For me, I have like kind of set questions that I ask myself. And it's a really good exercise. Nathania, one of our regular socialers, she uses it as well with the I'm feeling this, therefore I need this. And I also know a lot of it deals with just like a nagging thing in the back of my head where I start to kind of lean into it and feel a little bit of the like kind of tension rising, anxiety rising a little bit. Because I am a procrastinator. I think I live in the pressure realm, and that's something I'm still working on. But I just get that like nagging feeling in the back of my head. So I then try to structure and reprioritize. So that's kind of where I start to get that feeling. And a lot of it is I need to set aside time to complete these tasks. But when I do set aside the time, I actually need to do it because I am great at time management and organizing those things. So I will block out time and then I won't actually do it. So there's a little bit more accountability that I know I need to do. And I think that will make me kind of feel a little bit better, work a little bit better, and kind of reduce some of that nagging. But as always, I feel like this can be certainly a trickier mind map question. So you do have the entire week to kind of look at this. But what I also love about the socials is sometimes it's not looking for a specific answer. It's kind of understanding maybe where your hesitation are in some of these categories, what triggers this, what is what you needed for inspiration, and even just having the conversation about, I'm having a hard time with this prompt because I have found that's amazingly valuable because then you just feel a little bit better of trying to tackle all of these questions. But now I'm going to give you some time to work on this, but we would love to have that conversation in the chat. But again, we're working on our mind map, week 3 of April, connecting with ourselves, and just considering activities where we can connect with ourselves on a daily basis. And just so that we set aside that time to understand our inner thoughts and feelings as we focus on the theme this month. So I'm going to play some music and we'll see you. Thank you, everybody, for sharing. I loved seeing all of the different tools that you use, but even just kind of the support that you provide each other with even your examples. Loved seeing some folks that would lean into their hobbies a bit more, changing up some of those other routines that you wouldn't quite feel are as connected to this. So I saw that someone was working on bedtime. And so I always appreciate getting to read all of these, but also just the sharing, either hesitation, anxiety around some of this, the challenges that we see, the shortcomings. And I feel like even just acknowledging those in this type of space always feels a little bit better to realize that you're not alone. You're not the only one kind of in that little bit of a slump at the moment, but also great ways to kind of find and connect across those different ideas as we just try to take a little bit of time for ourselves and making an awareness in that capacity a little bit more of a priority. So thank you for sharing. And please continue to share in the chat if you want to around those previous prompts, even as we move forward through the social. We do have a time constraint, which I have consistently gone over the last couple times, so I'm working on that. But you can feel free to share it in the chat even as we go and let me know if you need to go back to different examples or different ideas as we move through that. We can always make that happen. So we are now going to turn to page 44 in your April journal for that rosebud thorn exercise. This is an opportunity for you to take back a little bit of some of that control to acknowledge the previous week that you had and looking at it from a rose perspective, a bud perspective, and then a thorn perspective, giving each of them their kind of moment for you to decide if that is something that you can take with you into the next week, or if you just want to leave it as is. I feel like it's a great way to determine how you want to kind of enter the week, how these things happened, all those type of things. So I enjoy this opportunity to reflect back. So your rose is going to be a highlight, something that made you smile, that went better than expected, something that you just are kind of happy, or again, that bright spot, which I think is always great. For me, anytime I move or change locations, I have to dive into the medical system, which is a challenge in and of itself, but I always get excited when it goes smoothly, it goes easily. I had a new primary care and she was wonderful and she was lovely. Listened to all the questions and concerns, got some blood work back, and it was definitely better than I expected, which is always a win. So just in a good space for that, because I do have quite a bit of anxiety around that, just because I do have an autoimmune condition. So there's a lot of mental gymnastics that are required when I deal with something new in that capacity. And so far it has been great. And I want to, it went smooth and I appreciate that. The bud is an emerging activity, something new, something exciting, something that you're looking forward to, something that could lead to other things. I don't know if everybody is as aware, but my job contract ended when I was over in Scotland. So now I'm over here looking for new new opportunities. And so I have some interview opportunities coming up, which is always great. It's exciting. It's nice, is why I always put it. Someone is knocking on my door interested in at least letting me try to get a job. But I'm also waiting on other opportunities. There's one that I was selected for, waiting for a final offer. So that's just really excited to kind of have a kind of TBD date type thing, which would be really, really nice and certainly ease a lot of the things that I have concerns about and why I feel a little less tethered than usual, which always makes me a little nervous. And then the thorn, that's going to be something that didn't go so well, a challenge, a speed bump, something that maybe took up a little too much time, energy, and effort on you. I love having my car back, but she's a 2014, so she needed some work and she needed some love, which always costs money. And that's fine. It was just unexpected and no one likes to spend money on those type of things, but it is what it is. She is back to where she needs to be, and I am thrilled but it always stings just a little bit. So, if you would like to share your rosebud thorn in the chat, we always like to celebrate those roses, get excited for those buds, and just provide some extra love, thought, strength, and support for those thorns. But again, we are on page 44 for that rosebud thorn exercise, and we will see you soon. Thank you, everybody, for sharing. And again, love seeing just all the support that you provide each other because what is that magical concept about the Sonder part of Silk and Sonder is that everyone is living these very vivid and amazing lives, even if you are experiencing those roses, the thorns, and everything in between. It is always good to, again, to see to those. So sending everybody some celebratory things on all the things that went well and sending finding just some extra love and support around some of those friend challenges, family challenges as you navigate schedules, as well as I feel like just the life things, the damage to cars, damage to houses, weather, as well as illness. But thank you everybody for sharing. So now we're going to move to page 46 and 47 in your April journal. These are the two weekly setup pages that we are going to talk through for the rest of the social. So again, if you need me to go back for examples, let me know. But I always like to kind of frame the next pages as asking yourself, what do you need this week? Because sometimes what you need is exactly as written on the page. You need that structure. You need all of those questions answered, all of those what ifs, all of those goals set, all of those to-dos outlined, overlaying all those habits and activities, as well as the page two things to focus on the self-awareness, all of those things that we are juggling at once. Or sometimes what you need is a complete revamp and a complete repurpose of this page, because you need some of that maybe built-in flexibility just to help manage your expectations. And sometimes what you need from these pages is you need a break, because we know that each week is going to look a little bit different. I think Alice, I saw that your day is going to be a little bit different than what you had originally planned, which we love being able to help out in that capacity, but it certainly makes building a routine tricky. So take a moment. If you get a little stuck, if you get a little hesitant, a little anxious about it, ask yourself, what do you need? And I found that that really helps me kind of focus in on what I need, or maybe where I need flexibility, where I need ideas to really sit in Jello versus sitting in cement, all of those things. And sometimes what I need completely changes come Wednesday or Thursday, and I rip out those pages and start all over. But that's what's great about starting each week anew with this structure. So we're going to start at the top of page 46 with this week I want to feel. And I like to frame this as how I want to feel this time next week. As I'm experiencing the roses, the buds, and the thorns, I want to be able to have that center point, that goal, that orientation that I can come back. I think in points of like, if you have points on a line, A to B, I'm going from A to B each week. How I'm going to get there may look different. It could be that very straight, direct line, or it could have some detours, some forks in the roads, and we may have had to pave our own street in the process. And that's okay. But I love that idea of being able to take that control. And sometimes it's your word of the month. Sometimes it's your word of the year. Sometimes it's leaning into that theme. Sometimes it's the same feeling and emotion that you had last week because it really spoke to you and worked you through. Maybe it's 1% better. Maybe it is more something, less something. Maybe it is tapping into that self-awareness, being a little bit more connected. Maybe you need a new word each day because of how you're going to have to tackle your day. I love the idea of pictures are worth 1,000 words. So maybe it's a doodle, maybe it is a sticker. It's something to kind of add that positive, either motivation or validation or affirmation in that idea there. So if you would like to share in the chat this week how you want to feel or how you want to feel this time next week, I'm going to play a quick song and then we'll move on to Okay, so now that we have this idea, and if you didn't come up with something, don't worry. One of our other facilitators, Bailey, will actually come back to this section occasionally and use it more as a summary, or maybe that's kind of more the focus. So now, excuse me, we're staying on page 46, and I'm going to combine the two sections, the weekly major three goals, as well as the weekly to-dos. We have just found that a lot of our participants will kind of combine these in that element. That is certainly how I structure this page. So, and that's where he said there's no right or wrong way to set up your journal. There's no right or wrong way to do this. I'm just providing some of the examples and the things that I confidently use, but as not the only way to do it. So, with the major three goals, maybe these are a category. Maybe you want to focus on a mind goal, a body goal, and a soul goal. I like the idea of our brain's fascination with alliterations. So, sometimes I will use and lean into the alliterations to trick myself to get more excited about things, even though they're probably not as exciting. So, that's why I like the idea of revisit, restore, and relax. And then, as well as the frog, the fun, and the fierce. I also like, again, another category idea is the four C's. So just because it does say three doesn't mean you need to stick to three. And sometimes it's just the major goals or the minor goals. And so the four C's are a create goal, a consume goal, a cavort goal, and a commune goal, which focuses on you, others, moving, and your social components. And then I liked the idea of having the categorized mind, body, soul goals directly linked to those to-dos in the section right next door. And I think that's a good focus point. And then I liked the top section. This is kind of where I tend to place my weekly major three goals. They're more the mental and emotional reminders that I need to provide myself for the week ahead. And so the person in the top right actually completely relabeled it with weekly major three affirmations. So their to-do list are those categories. And then they've brought in an affirmation, which is another example there. Again, what I would consider those mental and emotional reminders to help you get through the week. Or again, maybe you just want to focus on two categories, a home and a work, or even like others and a self, or again, tricking ourselves with that let go, leap into, and learn. And then we have our weekly to-dos. And so these can be a traditional to-do list. Maybe it is more of a to-da list, which the difference between to-do and to-da is that everything is to-done. It's just when did you celebrate? I also like the Eisenhower matrix idea with the do, decide, delegate, or delete. I don't normally delete anything. I just delay it. So again, tricking myself with that alliteration, but it's just a way to kind of recategorize kind of your to-do list because I have found that a lot of my to-dos do get carried over from week to week, especially when I'm quite busy. And so if I just basically reshuffle the deck, so to speak, I always find another way to either recategorize or reprioritize, or even just find ways to block that off, which is when I bring in the Pomodoro technique. When I really need some almost like micromanagement type structure to my week to get those things done. So I know that that can also be a helpful tool. But again, maybe it is just categorizing some of those to-dos. Maybe it's looking at them from a needs and want perspective because you have a lot of random things that you want to do. But maybe you'll feel a little bit better if you lean a little bit more into the want versus the need, or sometimes the need takes priority, and that's just how can you bring these back into your sphere of influence and your control. But sometimes what you need is a break or lean into those roses with the happy thoughts, the weekly wins. Maybe this is the gentle reminders instead of to-dos and to-das. Maybe it's just to be, or maybe they're not to-dos. So I'm going to give you some time to work on this, but even as Jen put in the chat, we would love to see what type of goals you are currently working on. Do you relate them to your to-do list, or are they kept completely separate with just the big things you need to get done or the higher priority things? And so we will see you soon. Thank you, everybody, for sharing. I loved that I was not the only one that had to carry over some to-dos from the previous week. And I just find that that certainly happens. And I have found that it really happens like mid-month. So I don't know again if I've just lost momentum or the month that I expected to have is taking a little bit of a detour. Um, but the fact that I can always look at these with a different lens or a different perspective each week, I find really helpful because again, I've probably written the same, probably four or five things down, but being able to write them in a different order or write them in a different color, um, makes it seem like I'm doing something different. And I have found that quite helpful. But a lot of times it is, I just need to kind of reprioritize, reshuffle, and figure out what needs to be done sooner rather than later. Or I am kind of stuck, luckily, with a lot of things that just don't have delivery dates or due dates. So then they just sit in weird purgatory until I figure out when to tackle them. But we are now going to move to that bottom section on page 46, those habits and activity trackers. And this is where I love focusing and prioritizing how I want to spend, how much time I'm going to set aside, how much energy am I going to set aside for those habits and activities that I want to do every single day. And so I will take my monthly habit tracker. I have the same three things that I want to do every single day, which is move, journal, and read every single day. I am a creature of habit, and that is why it looks like that. And so I carry them over into my weekly setup pages. And what I love about that is then I add the lens of reality to it. So it is, for the move category. I have scheduled a handful of Pilates classes this week. So that checks off a lot of the move requirements each day because I am prioritizing the opportunity to do so. Absolutely, Amanda, still right away. And so it's more of these are the three things that I know I want to set aside time for that are independent of my workload, my school load, my other demands, and all those capacities. So that is where I like to put these things on that category of like, these are the three things that, energize me, make me feel better. These are my Zen moments, my meditation moments. So I will absolutely find ways to set aside time while still managing my expectations around it. But maybe you have five things that you want to accomplish. Maybe you want to set goals for those. That's the way to kind of add that structure. Maybe this is more of your mental and emotional reminders to help you through the week. Maybe this is the section that you need a break from. Usually, this is the section if I have friends over or family in town or I'm on vacation, this section kind of falls down the priority list and it gets covered with stickers because, as I said, I use that monthly tracker pretty diligently. So sometimes it just happens that way. I like the idea of maybe your weekdays looking different than the weekends and helping you manage those expectations. And then just because there are five lines does not mean you need to fill all five lines. Like I said, I diligently have three. I will sometimes add a fourth. And a lot of that'll be more just like, how am I feeling? And a lot of it is kind of being more present, slow down some of those tactics there. So I will probably this week, just because I have a lot going on, kind of lean into the taking the longer way home. I like to sit and listen to music in my car. I am one of those carpool karaoke types. So I will tend to take a longer route just to get home. And in that, like, kind of just even 5 minutes of quiet music clarity always makes me feel a little bit better. And certainly able to tackle whatever is going to happen as soon as I get home. And then I do love the idea of iconography. So I get these from social media, but I love kind of making the magic in ordinary days. And I've done that with bucket lists or adventure lists. I repurpose my expense tracker for those things. So I love the inspiration of these type of things because so many times, you're already kind of inherently doing these, so why not make it special? And if you're in the productive realm, why not add it to a list of things that you've accomplished? Because I think it's really nice. It's really fun. I mean, when was the last time you scheduled a brunch with friends and family, or even just the small pivot of going outside for your morning coffee or morning tea with the expectations of getting bombarded with allergies, but still doing it anyway? So I'm fine that a lot of these things I naturally check off my list just because those are things that I do throughout my day anyway. And again, I just love the really nice reminders of all of those great things. So I just find it really helpful, really. And like you said, to find the magic and the whimsy and the glimmers throughout your day. So I am going to give you some time to work on this, but I would love to hear what habits you are working on, and we'll see you soon. Okay, so now that we have kind of talked through page 46, we're now going to turn over to page 47, that second page, which I lovingly refer to as the B side. So we just completed everything that I do on a weekly basis. And then this other page is one that I use more of as a supplement or jokingly refer to the B side of the record because there are some gems, but it's not something that I listen to or use all the time. That is just how I established what do I need from the pages. And I was just kind of phoning in this page. I was only partially tracking things. I'd kind of have a meal plan that was only half done. The mind body health plan would sometimes only get like a line. And so it was just a weird page for me. And I found that I got more excited when I used it a little bit more intentionally. So I'm going to combine all of these sections. So let me know if I need to go back to different examples when I go off camera. But we're going to start with that meal plan. And sometimes it's best what you need is to use it exactly as listed for that meal plan. But it's also something that you can do more in a tracking capacity. So something more real time. And that can be a meal tracker, food tracker. If you are on some healthcare journey with a professional, you can utilize it that way. Maybe it is for a specific medical condition. Maybe it's a mental health condition. Maybe this is where your to-dos live. Maybe this is where your meetings live. Maybe it's leaning a little bit more into the meal plan for the soul. So you can list some of your reflections and your prompts there. If you're working with Jenny, our AI on-demand coach, maybe this is where you provide some of her inspiration components there, either in the quotes or the categories, just the conversations that you have with her. The reflection tool can be there. Maybe it's a daily doodle leaning into that creative side. As Jen O says, if you've been to some of her coloring socials, turning your brain off in that meditative state for coloring, or leaning a little bit more into some of those creative endeavors that can help for some of those more analytical, data-driven brains that have to operate during working hours. Maybe it is a haiku. It's leaning into the highlights, the to-dos. Where did you find your happy that week? I absolutely use it as a clothing tracker or a wardrobe planner. Used it on vacations. It really helps me with that. So I appreciate all of those things. And then shifting over to the mind body health plan. Maybe this is another one of those that you want to schedule ahead of time, or it is something that you can track in real time. Leaning into maybe the days of, I saw that some people were cheering on the Boston Marathon. So leaning into some of those fun events that are coming up. I feel like mine has gotten inundated with a lot of sports that I'm watching because I have missed being able to watch all the random sports 24/7. And then when I talked about earlier, that kind of really great self check-in, I like the I feel and I need. This is that example of someone who repurposed. I actually am pretty sure this is Nathania's example, where she repurposed her mind body health plan for that just brief mental check-in of I am feeling this, therefore I need this. So it's a really great structure that can be quite powerful. Maybe it is leaning into those bucket list ideas. So these kind of adventure lists. So maybe this is where that lives. Maybe it's leaning into your hobbies. So maybe this is where you're tracking your reading log, or your craft log, kind of craft status. Or even if you're a big gardener, maybe this is the gardening plan, 7 types of rest, or just those gentle reminders to be present, prioritize yourself. And again, I like my iconography, so things that make me happy. I thought these were really lovely because it's always some of the simple things. And then here are some other questions for like that quick mental check-in. I think it comes down to even Jen brought it up. I think it was soil, something like that, where it's like, am I hydrated? Am I hungry? Am I bored? With some of those simple questions, because you find that if you can answer those with yes or no questions, maybe that's really where the problem lies. And so I love that check-in with those cute little googly-eyed pictures. And then the shopping list, that's the last kind of tied into that, and it can go tie in with the meal plan because that can support what you need for that meal plan or some of those structures. Maybe this is where the bingo boards are. We love a good themed bingo. Celebrate the win. Maybe it's a spring bingo. Maybe you have a milestone birthday or just a birthday coming up. Maybe you have another milestone coming in. And so it's a great way to create that type of capacity. I think it's really fun and leaning into that dopamine hit of the gamification of some of our to-dos. But maybe this is the gentle reminders for the to be, the shopping lists, the don't buy, the buy. Courtney, congratulations on your anniversary. Love that. Maybe it's leaning into those social check-ins because I feel like if you are experiencing some of these feelings and emotions, maybe some of your friends and family are, if you have time and energy to put to that. We love that. Maybe this is where the quotes are, your wardrobe planner here, self-care reminders, or even just a fun thing to put those stickers because stickers want to be stuck. They don't want to be hoarded. So leaning into some of that. So I'm going to stop talking. Let me know if you want to see a specific example again. We will play one final song and then we will do the close and we'll see you. Thank you, everybody, for sharing. And then we do have that very, very last box on page 47, which is the I am loving section. This is an opportunity to just put out into the world what is making you happy, what is making you smile, what is something that you are loving. So if you would like to share it in the chat, something that you are loving, we would love to have that kind of intentional optimism as we close out our socials. And so With that, can you believe it? We've reached the end. We'd love to continue the conversation in the Silk and Sonder app. You guys provide such amazing inspiration. We obviously love seeing all of your pages if you want to share them, because you're definitely going to be able to inspire somebody in the app, as well as we as facilitators love to see them because we pull them for our socials to highlight just how creative and how productive that these things can kind of bridge. Because as we say, there are so many different ways to do this and accomplish it. And sometimes what you need is what someone else has kind of shared. And so we love that idea. We do have our Soak and Sonder April exclusive happening tomorrow. Jenna was hosting that, the Spring Clean Reset. This does come with a fee, but if you can attend in person, that's wonderful. If you can't, don't worry, you will still get the link to the review for that. And so we know that these are always really fun, really special, and just another way to kind of add another layer when it comes to those. And then we have made some amazing updates to our Sonder coach, which is Jenny, and we're always making adjustments there. So if you want to reach out to concierge at silkandsonder.com to understand some of those new things, those minders, those issues and things, we always enjoy that. And then if you happen to miss a social, you can go to the YouTube link that Jen has provided in the chat where you can see all of the recordings that you have. So if you had to leave early, or if you needed to, if you had to show up a little bit late, or if you just want another facilitator's perspective on some of the prompts, that is a great place to start. This is a copy of my playlist. I will include the Spotify link in the chat afterwards. And as always, we are so glad that you joined us. We hope that you have an amazing rest of your day. You're going to have an amazing rest of your week. And we hope to see you at a future event real soon. Bye.